welcome to Mz.Rootz online education sessions platform. We've got a special guest today. I'm going to introduce him as being a master at what he does. And what he does is he's very fluent with interpreting the Bible, if you like. He can spit quotes, like how people spit bars, and he impressed me, and I'm sure he's going to impress you. So I'm not going to say much more because he has a lot to say for himself. So without further ado, would you like to introduce yourself, young man, to the audience?
Hi family, I hope you're all okay, and you'll get a lot of edification from this. So my name's Nathan Israel, and I'm born in Wolverhampton, and from there I was living here until about 2002, then moved to London for about 8 years, came back about 2010, and then I've been back here since. And over the years, I've just obviously been to many places, had lots of experiences, and it's brought me to here, something that I've become more passionate about, which is knowing who I am as a person, my true identity. Because I obviously had a clouded judgment, and I'm pretty sure the rest of us has had a clouded judgment of who we are as a people. Like, for example, you can get 5 different so-called Black people and ask them what their nationality is. One will say Jamaican, one will say Black, one may say West African, and the other one will say Black British, you know, or in America, they say African American. So despite this one nation, they've all given themselves different nationalities, but no matter where you'll find a Chinese person, he'll always say he's Chinese. Even if he was born in Africa, he'll still identify with Chinese, but we will identify with places where we've been born or raised.
Okay, so let's go right there then. So what happened to cause the segregation? As you say, well, no matter where the Chinaman is or no matter where the Indian man is, he knows his roots. He knows where he's from, and he can identify himself with a nation. What happened to cause the Black family, the African family, to separate themselves into all these different nationalities? How would you define that?
Well, for some reason, just put it this way, this book here has several stigmas attached to it. And one is a fantasy book because of how it's been depicted about, you know, Adam and Eve, and there was a talking snake in the garden, but that's like an allegory, right? Well, it's like, sorry, how can I say it? A personification. And the thing that nowhere in the Bible it mentions an apple, but people now perceive that the fruit was an apple. It could have been a peach, but it wasn't, not even a fruit like that.
Yeah.
Right? So, anywho, this book, in fact, is a history book, believe it or not. Because if you don't believe in the Bible, but you can pick up a history book like this, which I'm going to use as well, and believe this more than this, then it's like mixed messages in your own mind. Because things that are written in these history books was pre-written here, prophesized in this book what was going to happen, and they all came to pass.
I think that's amazing, because what I've been telling my subscribers is to have an open mind, and when they're doing research, which is key for critical thinking, that they mustn't disregard anything and be able to critically analyze pieces of information. And I've already advocated the Bible as being one of the most powerful books of our time. So I'm looking forward to getting into this. I've got my book too, but what I have noticed is, obviously mine's backwards. In the camera, it's going to be flip reverse, obviously. I've got the King James version, which is the most common version used amongst the Black family, right? Now, your version's not this. Can you just explain to the audience what you have?
This is the 1611, so it's King James, but the 1611 version. Now, if you was to look up online, what is in this book that the most common books have, right? What the common books don't have. the common book in the Christian church has 66 books. This has 80 books in the Bible.
Wow.
It's known as the Apocrypha, which means the missing books. Now, there was if you know about the history of Christopher Columbus, he needed a specific book in the Apocrypha to find out where the Hebrews who traveled over to America were before he conquered that land. He needed this book, right? He needed the book of Esdras to find out where they were located.
So it's almost used as a map
as well.
So
and
that's why.
Yeah, in the back of a lot of Bibles, there were maps. I know a lot of the maps have been taken out.
Yeah, that's true.
You know? So why would there be maps in the Bible?
So hence why they removed and revised the Bible to take away certain secrets. And when I say they, I mean the powers that be, the elites, the people who are controlling the world as it stands. Okay, so let's get back to looking at the segregation of the people. When did it occur? And can you point it out in the Bible? And to all my subscribers, I'm going to be putting in the description box a list of all of the verses and chapters that we're going to be looking at today. So you can go back and you can reference and have a look for yourself. All right?
Okay.
Yeah?
All right. We're going to go to the book of Deuteronomy chapter 28.
Deuteronomy chapter, verse what?
28.
Verse what?
We'll start from Deuteronomy chapter 1 and verse 1 so we can get the context.
Okay.
Right? Because in this, whilst we're talking about a scattered people, I'm going to also read verses and I want you to do a cross-reference.
Okay.
People to do a cross-reference to know, okay, then who are these people talking about? So who is the Bible talking about? Who are these people today? Because there's 18 main nations in the Bible, then obviously nations that stem from there. But then we've got a specific people. Deuteronomy chapter 1 and verse 1. We're going to go there.
All right.
Okay. The book of Deuteronomy chapter 1 and verse 1. And it says, "These be the words which Moses spake unto all Israel on this side Jordan in the wilderness, in the plain over against the Red Sea, between Paran and Tophel and Laban and Hazeroth and Dizahab." So these are obviously places which exist. So we're getting some geographical knowledge of where these people were at the time. We're talking about the story of Moses, and he led the children of Israel out of Egyptian captivity. So this is when they're now in the wilderness. So I brought out this verse so we'll know who this book is speaking to. Is it speaking to every nation or the specific people that came out? It says, "These be the words which Moses spake unto all Israel." So the people in mind are the Israelites. Okay? So this is the historical name of this nation, right? And it's always been there. So from there, we're going to jump to Deuteronomy chapter 28 and verse 1.
Okay. Verse 1. I'm there.
Okay, you'll get there a bit quicker than me because I got Roman numerals. Yeah. Sometimes I get it straight away, sometimes not.
I love the Old Testament, so I can literally get to the Old Testament, but I've told you before, when it gets to the New Testament, I'm a little bit scatty. So yeah. I am a student today and I'm enjoying this, and I hope everybody else is enjoying it too.
Excellent. All right, so we got the context. We're speaking to the children of Israel. And it says here, this is Deuteronomy chapter 28 and verse 1. "And it shall come to pass, if thou shalt hearken diligently unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to observe and to do all his commandments which I command thee this day, that the Lord thy God will set thee on high above all nations of the earth." So this was an ultimatum, part of an ultimatum that the Most High gave unto the children of Israel, which is, if you serve the Most High, do what he says, follow what it says, because what was given on Mount Sinai was the first 5 books, which was known as the Torah.
Yeah.
What people would say, the first 5 books were the laws, statutes, and commandments in the Bible. We had dietary laws, marital laws, ceremonial laws, and if we kept them, we'd be set on high above all nations. Well, the Israelites, okay? And I'm going to, the reason why I say I, because obviously I have lived now in the knowledge of knowing my identity, but I'm trying to start from scratch with those to know who are the Israelites are today.
Okay.
So the ultimatum is, if you keep the commandments, it will set the children of Israel on high above all nations. Now here's the flip side. Let's jump down to verse 15. When you read from verse 1 to 14, anyone can do that in their own time, it talks about all of the blessings that will come on the children of Israel. Their land will be blessed, their increase will be blessed, they will have a want for nothing, they'd be above all nations, just like how the elite are above all nations today, running the world. The children of Israel would have had that status. That would have been known as being in heaven.
Yeah, heaven on earth.
Heaven on earth.
And it's interesting because the people who have ultimate power now are considered to be the Jews, the people who have the big corporations and the financial freedom. And I mean, we've got to be careful now because we might be dubbed as being anti-Semite, you know, just by having this conversation, but they know what they're doing. They know what they're doing because they don't want people to know the truth.
Well, this is what it is. The best way to do it, rather than we personally being not classed as anti-Semites, which we know the truth behind that, Mz.Rootz. I know that we both know that truth. But if we allow the Most High to speak, we can't be held accountable for what's being said in this book. The Bible's going to show for us to be able to start to use our mind to cross-reference, who are these people really talking about? Who are the scriptures talking about? So let's find out.
Beautiful.
So here's the understanding here. Verse 15 says this. So Deuteronomy 28 and verse 15, it says, but it shall come to pass, if thou wilt not hearken unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to observe to do all his commandments and his statutes, which I command thee this day, that all these curses shall come upon thee and overtake thee. So the flip side is, if the children of Israel did not keep the commandments, a bunch of curses are going to come over to them. And this was spoken over 3,000 years ago to them. Now, when we read through these are something that's going to come to pass. These are future prophecies. Now, let's find out what the purpose of these curses are. We're going to jump down to verse 46. Let's get that. And it says, and they shall be upon thee for a sign and for a wonder, and upon thy seed forever. Now, what is the purpose of a sign?
To give you a warning, to kind of let you know that something's about to happen. Right?
And also a sign is to identify with something.
Ah, okay.
Like a stop sign, a sign, like, you know, a shop sign. If you want to know where Primark is, you just look at the sign to identify with that building. Same way with this. If you want to know who the true children of Israel are, read the curses and cross-reference it to every other nation upon this earth. Did it happen to the Chinese? Did it happen to those people living in Israel today known as the Jewish people? Did it happen to the Russian or the Europeans? Did these things happen to them? Right? We're going to read a few of the curses and see who these happen to. Simple as that. Okay. So we're going to go back up a few verses. Deuteronomy chapter 28 and verse 32. And it says, thy sons and thy daughters shall be given unto another people, and thine eyes shall look and fail with longing for them all the day long, and there shall be no might in thine hand. Now, which nation of people had their sons and daughters taken away from them and, you know, given to other people, and the Israelites having no power in their hand? Did that ever happen to the Chinese, Japanese, the people living in Israel now? No. Did it happen to the so-called black people?
Although the people that are living in Israel now would argue that the Holocaust identifies them as being that people.
Okay, so let's continue then. If there was to go with the one scripture.
Yeah.
Yep. So, let's jump down to verse 48. Verse 48.
Yeah.
It says, therefore shalt thou serve thine enemies, which the Lord shall send against thee, in hunger and in thirst and in nakedness and in want of all things. So the three basic commodities, food, clothing, and water, the Israelites are going to have to serve other nations to get these things, right? Here's a key thing now, key identity. Now, did this happen to them? The argument was that they could use the Holocaust of that. It says, and he shall put a yoke of iron upon thy neck until he have destroyed thee. Now, if you was to Google yokes of iron, you will not find any of those Jewish people with yokes of iron around their neck.
Yeah.
Just Google it, anybody.
Yeah.
You'd only find so-called black people with yokes of iron on their neck.
So we're talking about the transatlantic slave trade, where we were shackled, ball and chain, you know,
Exactly.
we're the only people that had that iron casted on our bodies. Okay, that's interesting.
Let's get the next verse actually as well. And it says, and the Lord shall bring a nation against thee from afar, from the end of the earth, as swift as the eagle flieth, a nation whose tongue thou shalt not understand. Now, that's called colonization. Someone coming into your land, coming into your land and taking everything from you, right? You didn't understand their language. The same way Columbus went over to the Americas and found all the so-called Tainos, Arawaks, you know, the natives over there, the indigenous. And Columbus had to go there with 3 Hebrew-speaking people because he couldn't speak their language. He had to go with 3 Hebrew-speaking people when he found them to be able to communicate with them, be a so-called peacemaker. So this is that curse also being written in the scriptures. Here's another one. It says, verse 52, and he shall besiege thee in all thy gates until thy high fenced walls come down. So high and fenced walls come down wherein thou trusted throughout all thy land. And he shall besiege thee in all thy gates throughout all the land which the Lord thy God hath given thee. Now, what was Israel's chosen city? It was Jerusalem. Now let's get some history on what happened in Jerusalem. Okay. The same thing was written in the New Testament, right? And I'm going to get a reference in this book, From Babylon to Timbuktu, written by a black historian known as Rudolph R. Windsor. He actually went out his way to travel around, you know, the continent of Africa and learn about the rise of many nations, including the Jerusalem siege in 70 AD. You can Google that and find out what happened. In 70 AD, the Roman armies compassed Jerusalem, right? So that's where we're going to get to. But this was prophesied in Deuteronomy, and the Messiah also said the same thing, right? So we're going to go to the book of Luke, the book of Luke, chapter 21, I think, 21, and I think it's verse 20. 21, that's 22, 21, and verse 20. There we go.
Yeah.
Okay. And it says, and when ye shall see Jerusalem compassed with armies, then know that the desolation thereof is nigh. So this is the prophecy of what was in Deuteronomy. It says, when you see Jerusalem compassed with armies, now know that's going to be a desolation that's going to come to pass. And it says, then let them which are in Judea flee to the mountains. Now, to identify with where those mountains are, very often, like the time when Jesus was born, when Herod went after him, and then he told Mary and Joseph, and Gabriel told Mary and Joseph to go and flee to the mountains, go and flee to Egypt. Because before they built the Suez Canal, we could walk in and out of Egypt, look just like that.
Yeah.
You could walk in and out of Egypt, and I'll show you something about that afterwards, right? So, because it's something that won't make sense to someone until you understand what Egypt means as well.
Okay.
It's not just a landmass, it also has its ancient etymology word. It's a
Yeah.
Greek word, and also the word prior to that was Mitzrayim, right? Or someone would have called it Cush and all those places, but Mitzrayim also was the Hebrew name, which also make the same thing as the Egyptian part. But let's just get back to this part, so don't digress too much.
Yeah, because we're still dealing with what happened to the segregation of the people. And
Yes.
I'm going to say right now that we're going to have a series of sessions that we'll do together, okay? So hold fire on Egypt.
Okay then.
All right.
Excellent. Excellent. And it says, yeah, so let them that are in Judea flee to the mountains, and let them which are in the midst of it depart out, and let not them that are in the countries enter into their into. So we're saying, go flee to the mountains. When the Roman armies compassed Jerusalem, flee to the mountains, go and flee to Egypt. I'm going to tell you why, what the reason why that happened.
Okay.
Why did we flee to Egypt?
No, but it makes sense. It makes sense.
There's a reason why. It's the same way. How did Herod not find Jesus? Because he hid amongst people that looked like him. Right? And Rudolph R. Windsor said the same thing. So I'm going to read page 84 in the book From Babylon to Timbuktu. And it's going to say everything that's just happened here was prophesied.
Okay.
So this is page 84 in the book From Babylon to Timbuktu. And I'm going to read this portion here that's highlighted. And it says this: in the year 65 BC, the Roman armies under General Pompey captured Jerusalem. In 70 AD, General Vespasian and his son Titus put an end to the Jewish state with great slaughter. During the period of the military governors of Palestine, many outrages and atrocities were committed against the residue of the people. During the period from Pompey to Julius, it has been estimated that over 1 million Jews fled into Africa, fleeing from Roman persecution and slavery. The slave markets were full of Black Jewish slaves.
Wow.
Now, isn't that the same thing that was written here? Fleeing to the mountains, fleeing to Egypt. So why did they flee into Egypt? Let's read a small sentence. It's on page 114.
Okay.
It says, these Black Jews would naturally go to African countries, most of all because of less persecution, and they could disguise themselves easily among Blacks. The same way, if you had an issue with a Chinese person and you was to chase him, we went and hid in Japan or Korea, you ain't gonna find him, because to us, they all look the same. The same people say we all look the same.
Right.
You know?
Right. That's interesting. That's
very
interesting.
So that's history lining up with the scriptures.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Now, the scattering part now. Let's go back to Deuteronomy. Because when we fled into Africa, we endured a thing known as the sub-Saharan slave trade as well.
Yes.
So it said, remember, it said here that we'd have less persecution, but it became peak for us over there as well.
Yeah.
It got crazy.
The Arabs, right? When the Arabs came. Yep. Okay. But I think, again, that is a session on its own.
Yep.
Because a lot of people don't realize that there was a slave trade before the transatlantic slave trade, which is vital for our knowledge and key to our identity also.
100%. 100%. So yeah, back into Deuteronomy 28 and verse okay, verse 54 is another one. I'm going to read down about just a bit further down from the Jerusalem siege. Here's another curse that Israelites are going through today, even to this day.
So verse 28.
Chapter 28
Sorry.
and verse. Chapter 28 and verse. I'm going to read verse 64 first.
Okay.
Right. It said, and the Lord shall scatter thee among all people, from the one end of the earth even unto the other. And there thou shalt serve other gods, which neither thou nor thy fathers have known, even wood and stone. So it's saying that we'll be scattered amongst all people, serve their gods. It says even wood and stone. Now, the crazy thing is, when you look up the etymology of the context of this, the wood represents modern day Christianity and the stone represents the carbon stone. And that's what happened. The Israelites, the Israelites today, the most common religions that they will go into is Islam or Christianity. Now, which us as so-called blacks, we dwell in those religions. We don't follow Judaism as it is known today. It's always either Islam, Christianity, or Rastafarianism, or any one of the denominations of the Christian church. This is what we'll do. We'd be scattered amongst all people, and we'd start to serve their gods, whichever god is. Say, for example, if you was scattered over to China or anywhere, you'd be serving Buddha.
Yeah, that's right.
You'd be following that. You'd be raised in their customs and their ways. The same way we were raised, we started to become raised as Gentiles. We call ourselves Gentiles because we weren't allowed to conform to those ways when we were scattered. Like going back to the Roman captivity, the Greco-Roman Empire, there was a period where the Israelites weren't allowed to profess themselves as Jews anymore. They weren't allowed to even keep their Sabbaths, because anytime there was a point where the oppressive nations or the enemies of Israel, the one thing that they studied was how we operate. What is our power? Our power is the knowledge that's in this book. The same power is where they gave the powers onto these other nations, and they used it to divide the Israelites. And I'm going to show you that I'm going to stay in Deuteronomy rather than flipping back and forth. I'm going to read verse 68 now to see if this happened to the Jewish people here, or did this happen to another nation of people? So this is Deuteronomy chapter 28 and verse 68. It says, and the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships. Now the question is, if they were able to walk in and out of Egypt, and this is well before the Suez Canal was built, well before that, the Suez Canal was built after the slave trade started. It was after that, right? So imagine even to then, people could still walk in and out of Egypt from Jerusalem. But it said with ships. So why would you go into Egypt again with ships when you got mountains there? So the question is, what does Egypt mean? Right? When you read in Exodus chapter 20 and verse 2, it tells you this. Exodus chapter 20 and verse 2. And this lines up with the etymology as well. Anyone at their own time, at their own expense, can go and just look up the etymology of the word Egypt. But the Bible already tells you what it means as well. It says, there we go. Exodus chapter 20 and verse 2, which says, I am the Lord thy God, which have brought thee out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. Egypt is synonymous for the word bondage or oppression, the same, which is it's actually a Greek word which means, yes, bondage. And then also, if you look up the word Mitzrayim, it's Hebrew for oppression, bondage, or any other synonymous words along those lines. So it's showing us that Egypt, it says that you will go into slavery again, but with ships this time. Now, if you notice the symbolic things, like when we went to, when they were put into slavery on ships into Babylon or the United States or anywhere which is Babylonian, there's always symbolic things located to know that there's a resemblance of Egypt, which means bondage. Now I'm going to read verse 68 and just elaborate on that again. So it says, and the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships, by the way whereof I spake unto thee, thou shalt see it no more again, which means you ain't going to see your homeland again. And there ye shall be sold unto your enemies for bondmen and bondwomen, and no man shall buy you. Now, the word buy in this is an old Quaker word which means to redeem. So you'll be sold into slavery, like slave men and slave women. That's a bondman and a bondwoman, and no man shall redeem you. We've had great men that's tried to rise up in the history to try and redeem us out of the oppressive state that we're in today. Marcus Garvey, Malcolm X, Martin Luther King. But they all, even though they all had a good intention heart of doing it for their people, they all failed. They all failed, that's the truth. Not saying they failed bitterly and in a horrible way, because, you know, we appreciate what they wanted to do.
But the system was against them and there wasn't that ability to totally emancipate the people.
And because because what happens, the issue that the Israelites had at this point is that there were always, there's a scripture in Lamentations chapter 4 and verse 17, I'll just paraphrase it, which says, with our vain help, we have watched for a nation that cannot save us. Always going to the oppressor for help. When we had a system which was already in place, which how we could have dwelled as a community. We could have dwelt like with the laws that we had from the beginning.
Yeah.
But what happened when we started to adopt bitterness, constraint, and not apply what the Most High said he would do, he said, you know what? Like back in Deuteronomy, it says this, Deuteronomy chapter 20 and verse 47. Deuteronomy chapter 28 and verse 47.
Yeah.
It says, because thou servedest or served not the Lord thy God with joyfulness and with gladness of heart for the abundance of all things, it says, therefore shalt thou serve thine enemies. So because we didn't do that, here's your punishment.
Yeah.
You go to, if you don't want to serve me, you can go and serve your enemies. Go and serve those, and they're going to give you a hard time. They're going to make it tough for you.
Wow.
Now, and that's it. This is the thing that we need to start to do, is take accountability as a nation and come back to that common ground. At first and foremostly, to learn to love one another again. Don't look at ourselves the way we've been tried to, because that's what happened. It says that we would have an evil eye towards our brother. That's another curse when you read further down in Deuteronomy. And towards our wives. This is where you got the broken marriages today.
Yeah.
Right? Black on black crime. You know, we're quick to have that evil eye towards us, but then when someone else or another nation does it to a black person, we always go and scream certain things, like go to these protests, but who are you protesting to? First, we need to protest ourselves for having that hatred.
Yeah.
That's the ways that we behave. And that's the way we changed. And this is where, like in the Bible, it talks about how we need to start to adopt the love for one another as the children, especially. And the reason why I'm saying children of Israel, I'm pretty sure if I was to ask this question, when you read through the curses to identify who Israel is, with the few that I've mentioned, does it fit us or does it fit anyone else? Here's another one. Isaiah chapter 66 and verse 15. Check this. This is another one. Isaiah 66 and verse 15. Let me just grab it a lot quicker on my phone, because it's Roman numerals. Isaiah 66.
Verse 15. I've got it.
66 and verse 15. 66.
For behold, the Lord will come with fire and with his chariot.
No, it's not this one. Okay. My bad. It's 45 and verse 4. 45. Isaiah 45 and verse 4, I think. I'll know when I see where. Isaiah 45 and verse 4.
For Jacob my servant's sake, and Israel mine elect. That one?
No, it's Isaiah 66. 65 and Isaiah 65 and verse 15. Damn, there's too many scriptures rolling from my brain.
No, it's good. It's on.
Isaiah 65 and 15. 65 and verse 15.
65, 15, my people. So it says, and ye shall leave your name for a curse unto my chosen.
Mhm.
For the Lord God shall slay thee and call his servants by another name.
Oh, exactly, because originally they were known as Israel. But guess what? His chosen are Israel, but he said they'll call them by another name. They'll be called by another name. And that happened when, during the sub-Saharan slave trade and the transatlantic, and the Israelites were put on plantations, whose surname did they adopt? They didn't have their true tribal surnames anymore. They had the name from a different nation.
Masters,
Browns,
masters, yeah.
master's name. So that's what would happen. You know, we'd
Wow.
have Campbell, Smith, Jones, all this. And so then the confusion that we have now as people, when we look at oh, I'm a Campbell, you're your slave master's servant now. You're not saying I'm an Israelite anymore because that's been stripped away from you. And how did that happen? Psalms chapter 83.
All right then.
Key history.
Say that again, Psalms
83 and verse 2.
verse 2.
82 and verse 80. Is it 82 verse 83 and verse 2? Psalms 83. Yes, it is. Psalms 83 and verse 2. Yes. It says, For lo, thine enemies make a tumult. A tumult is like a loud, angry gathering. So for lo, thine enemies make a tumult, and they that hate thee have lifted up their head. For they have taken crafty counsel against thy people and consulted against thy hidden ones. They have said, Come and let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be no more in remembrance.
Oof.
For they, exactly, so they all come together, these nations have all had a piece of the pie of Israel. That's why when they were scattered, they've used them all up, made them labor, work hard, use all of them, their knowledge and expertise, their creativity to build other colonies, like the Great Wall of China, the Tang Ming dynasty, scattered over there. All these great buildings that you see, including the White House, were built off the backs of the Israelites, where they were scattered. They will build up all other nations, and the scriptures in the Bible to back that up, that it was going to happen. We will build, we'll plant vineyards, but we won't eat the fruit thereof. So we'll be planting them on the plantations, making other nations prosper, but then they'll still stay at rock bottom of society.
Wow.
You know?
I think what a beautiful place to begin to conclude, right? And that's almost like a cliffhanger. We have to be mindful of the time now. But we need to summarize today's session, Nathan.
Yes.
So to summarize in your words, who are the people that should be identified as Israel, and where are they now?
Okay. To identify who are the real children of Israel, the ones who had sons and daughters taken off them and shipped over from plantation to plantation, the ones who had the name stripped from them and their identity, the one that's been scattered across all nations, the ones that had yokes of iron around their neck, and the ones that went into slavery on ships are the true Israelites. I can let you work that out for yourself. We've read it in the book. And you need to ask yourself, is it those people that's over there now in Jerusalem? Or is it those people that went through slavery?
Wow. And what is the purpose of identifying yourselves as being the people of Israel? Why is that important?
Oh, because once you know that you're Israel, you need to know what's your purpose and your responsibility as Israel. What is your purpose? What is your responsibility? Okay, Deuteronomy chapter, hang on. Let me get it. It's in Deuteronomy chapter 20. No, it's not even 28. This is the answer. Numbers, Deuteronomy 10. There we go. Deuteronomy chapter 10 and verse 12.
Okay.
So Deuteronomy 10 and 12. All right. Okay.
And now Israel, that one.
That's the one. Yep.
Shall
Excellent.
I read?
Yeah, you can read read down to verse 15.
And now Israel, what doth the Lord thy God require of thee, but to fear the Lord thy God, to walk in all his ways, and to love him, and to serve the Lord thy God with all thy heart and with all thy soul, to keep the commandments of the Lord and his statutes which I command thee this day for thy good. Behold, the heaven and the heaven of heavens is the Lord thy God, the earth also with all that therein is. Only the Lord had a delight in thy fathers to love them, and he chose their seed after them, even you above all people, as it is this day.
There you go. So our duty, our requirement was to fear the Most High. And fear is not be scared of him in that sense of, because he has the fear to stop anyone from breathing any day of their life. We did not manufacture the air that we breathe. There was a higher power, and this is the Most High. And this is where we have to reverence the Most High, because then our children follow suit when we show reverence to that higher power that respects us. You know, he could have wiped us all out completely. He could have wiped all of Israel out and we're not here. But he said he made the world for our sakes, but we failed to hold responsibility and take charge of the commandments. Now it says only the Lord had a delight in thy fathers to love them, and he chose their seed after them, even you above all people as to this day. So even in 2020, he still loves us because he still has his mercy, so we can get right and start to repent as a people. Repent means to turn from your wicked ways and come back to what the Most High originally told to do in the first place. And if we do that and start to do it as a unit, as a people, then we'd understand, okay, we will be known as, and other nations, you can go on YouTube, will tell you that the true Jews are black. And that's me saying what, you can just type in who are the real Jews on Google. And this is not just myself speaking, for those that are not aware of it. Like, we've had the Arabs talk about it. We've had a Jewish people, and the Jewish people that actually open their mouth, they get beaten up by their own for, oh, you're bringing the truth out, because the truth does hurt. You know, and with this knowledge comes a responsibility. And I think the main thing first is for us to bring awareness of who we are as a people, rather than, you know, we got Haiti, or what's that other place? We got there's an island that's split into two.
Haiti and Dominican Republic.
Yeah, they're the same people.
Yeah, they're the same people.
They've been divided and conquered. You know, the difference between us and many of the residents of West Africa was a boat stop. The bloodline never changed. But now we're referring ourselves, oh, that's our homeland, that's this and that. No, we need to just look at yourself as a whole, as a nationality. Just like I mentioned at the beginning, a Chinese man, no matter where he's born in the world, can still identify with being Chinese. You know, we're like Mowgli in Jungle Book at the moment. We don't know who we are until the very end.
And I think that, I mean, not just the Bible, but the nature kind of says that. I mean, from a holistic perspective, we can see exactly what the Bible was tells us. You can see in the nature that unity. We know all of the proverbs and the old wives' sayings about unity being more powerful, etc., etc. And it makes sense that that's why we're weak at the moment as a people. And I think we're in a special time now to start having these conversations about why there is the division and how we can get stuff back together. So I think that that session that we've just had is very powerful, and it's going to start trickling and triggering people's mindsets as to solutions, potential solutions, and identity being one of the main issues of our separation. So that's fantastic. I think there's so much more to be said, so much more that the Bible reveals. I have to highlight that it's nothing to do with religion, is it? It's literally, we're dealing with facts. Would you identify yourself as being a religious man?
Religious, according to the modern day meaning of religion, no.
Exactly.
The Bible condemned the Bible condemned modern day religion, because what happened when nations got hold of this book, they saw the power in it. A good reference to that is like the movie, the Book of Eli, Denzel Washington. When the white man, he was white, he wanted this book. Eli had it, and he wanted this book out of all books because of the power in it, so he can take over a colony. Now the problem is, this book, it's like, some people have attached a stigma saying this is the white man's book. Oh, it's a book of, this is what they used to enslave us. Yes, they did. They used certain verses. And when they stripped us of our language, they used certain verses. When we lost our identity as Israel, when they said, like, use scriptures like slaves, obey your masters. Now, there's a bad stigma attached to the word slave. In its antiquity, it just meant servants. When the Israelites had servants, it's just like having an employer. We never mistreated our employers, right? We never mistreated them. We could never do any damage to our own brethren unless the Most High said, the Most High says, no, that person has to go. It's like a bad egg, has to be stripped. You know what I'm saying? It's like removing like an infection, cutting off an infection. Say if you happen to have your leg amputated just to save your life. Sometimes members of Israel, the Israelites, had to be amputated completely because they're practically like the devil themselves if they couldn't be fixed, So all those things were happening. But then when they took this book, they used it for the wrong reasons. They used it because they knew we were naturally inclined. Naturally, as you said, holistically, we're naturally inclined to the higher power. We always were seeking God, but we never knew where to find him. So they decided to create denominations, religion, right? And then even in Christianity, when we were on the plantations, if you look at the leader of these denominations, like the Mormon church, the Pentecostal church, which are mostly full of blacks, in the Pentecostal especially, and other churches, in the Baptist church and this and that, they were all slave owners. They decided to make their own remixes of a religion into other denominations just to enslave the mindsets of us. We just thought, oh yeah, if it's the Bible speaking, we need to listen. But then we lacked the understanding of the Bible, and our first lacking was, who were we in the Bible? So then over the times, they had to, when they changed the images in the Bible, we started to look at the color of another nation as their God.
Yeah.
We wasn't looking at ourselves as that, because it says in the Bible, the Israelites says, ye are gods, but you die like men. We die like men because we are now conforming to ways against God.
Would you say that your version of religion, and I would say my version of religion, would be to realign yourself with the nature, to realign yourself with that cosmic energy, that divine purpose and the message from the Most High, which is a spiritual message as opposed to a religious message?
Yeah, well, the funny thing is that you saying that, well, before, when you're reading Genesis from the beginning, the law was the laws of nature itself before man was even created. We had so much knowledge, and as we would call it today, cosmic knowledge, like when Abraham taught the Egyptians, we had so much, all these maps and creating compasses to be able to navigate. We had that, but we lost all of it. The first thing first, the Most High blesses us with powerful wisdom when we start to just conform, because he can easily take all that away and turn you to a dummy, like out of the blue. And lacking that wisdom, we want to seek spirituality, But the spirit comes in law itself. The law itself is like the law of how a tree grows,
Yeah.
the law of how the birds fly, the law of how things happen. Like, for example, we're not supposed to, according to dietary law, we're not supposed to eat pigs. They're unclean, but does it mean that they don't serve a purpose? Everything on the, like every bacteria, the way the fish move in the sea at certain times of the year, they are more naturally inclined to us. A bumblebee, right, is not trained on how to pollinate. Now, if you go to even turtles, a turtle will lay so many eggs, about 70 eggs in the sand far away from the ocean. And then they'll come at us, and then their mother leaves, the mother goes. Then when they hatch, these baby turtles have not seen the light of day. As soon as they come out, the first place they know where to go is straight to the sea. They don't go, they go just, seeing them on the sand, scurrying around in that, They don't go off in the forest or in the fields or anything like that.
They know their purpose, yes.
Yeah. We now have lost our knowledge of purpose. We are now just, we've become that bad bacteria to the earth. And I'm speaking that as a whole. Every nation is doing that. The way we just throw rubbish down, you know, we're not like, when when we moan when it's raining, like we've got a nice, beautiful sunny day here in Wolverhampton, right? But it could be sunny for about 5-6 days and then it starts pelting down with rain. Oh, it's raining, the weather's miserable. Okay, if that's the case, if we don't want it to rain, then go out and go and water every form of vegetation that's out there. Go and do it yourself. We're not really helping the earth that's been given to us for our sakes, because we're lacking knowledge and purpose.
Hence climate change and
all this,
global warming, and you know, they're threatened now because we've lost that natural connection, and they know the earth is in an abysmal state, and they're worried now because the ice caps are melting and the temperatures are rising, and they are blaming human global warming, like we are the reason why the earth has gone up in temperature. So there's levels to everything that you're saying, bro. There's levels. But we are going to have to wrap up now, because I don't want this meeting to end and we're in the middle of a conversation.
Yes, I understand.
We knew that there was going to be so much to say, but this is just the first of many.
The iceberg.
Absolutely. So,
scratching service.
Is there anything you would like to say to conclude today's session? And do you think we hit what we said we wanted to hit with regards to a subject?
Yeah, with the whole scattering and just lining up with, you know, what's happened in real life, you know, in that sense with the scriptures. Yes, I can conclude that there's enough to plant seeds. We can't overfeed someone, you know. It's like when in the scripture talks about milk and, you know, desiring the sincere milk. It's like you're not going to, as soon as a baby is born into this knowledge or truth, or the analogy of a baby being born, you know, it's only milk that they need now. You can't be making them choke on meat so early, you know. So with this, it's a few things have been touched down, and to conclude, this is just the beginning. And if people want to know more, then in your own time, you can always study. There's many resources out there for you to study. Yes, and there are some red herrings about, you know, and things like that. So you'd have to just learn to discern that yourself, whether you think, okay, this is right and this is wrong. I'm not here to force or to throw out an agenda on anyone. All it is just a matter of identity and responsibility as a people.
Wow, beautiful. What can I say? I think that's a nice way to conclude. I look forward to us having another discussion. Okay, I am going to press stop on the record button now. Hide up this footage for my subscribers, and we'll talk again real soon. All right, Nathan. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
And we'll see you
soon.
You take care.
You take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.